Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us here today. We are delighted to welcome you to our webinar. My name is Sarah Egan, and I'm the General Manager with the Recruitment, Reform and Resourcing Programme at the Health Service Executive, the HSE, Ireland's publicly funded healthcare provider. One of my key areas of responsibility is talent attraction and engagement, and this webinar is designed to provide valuable information for candidates interested in working in the Republic of Ireland. Specifically, we will aim to cover guidelines for the recognition and registration processes with the Irish Nursing Regulator, the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Ireland, also known as NMBI. Before we begin, I would like to mention that this session is being recorded and you will be able to watch back later if needed. We have a full agenda today, aiming to give you an overview of the processes for having your qualifications recognised to onward registration by the Irish Nursing and Midwifery Regulator, the NMBI. Additionally, a brief overview of Ireland's publicly funded healthcare system, the HSE, will be provided. This information will include essential insights and resources to support you on your career journey in Ireland's healthcare sector. Key points will include information on career and job alert platforms, details on resources available for those relocating to Ireland, and so much more. During the presentation, we will also have a short survey, and we'd be very grateful if you could take a moment to complete it. Your feedback will help us improve and develop future projects. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to use the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session or via email afterwards. Don't forget to include your email address when asking questions so we can follow up if needed. I'm very grateful to our esteemed panel of experts who have joined us here today, and I'm confident you will benefit greatly from their knowledge. I'll quickly introduce the panelists and they might give us a wave so you know who they are. Ray Healy, Director of Registration, NMBI. Caroline Horgan, Registration Operations Manager, NMBI. Magella O'Doherty, Communications Manager, the NMBI. Anne Brennan, Director of Nursing and Midwifery Planning and Development Unit, the HSE. Conor Shanley, the HSE Talent Attraction Team, and Niamh Byrne from the HSE Talent Attraction Team. A couple of housekeeping points before we move ahead. Please note that all the attendees' microphones and cameras will be turned off for the duration of the webinar, but if you have any questions, as mentioned, feel free to enter them into the Q&A function. If we can't get your question during the session, we'll follow up afterward by email. The session will be uploaded to the HSE Career Hub, and I would highly recommend that you register with the HSE Career Hub as an invaluable resource. We'll provide further details on this platform as we move through the session. We encourage you to stay for the entire session, but if you're unable to, don't worry, the session will be recorded, and once available, a link of the recording will be sent to your registered email. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Ray Healy from the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Ireland, who will go into more detail on the recognition and registration processes. Thank you, and over to you, Ray.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ray Healy, and I'm Director of Registration with the NMBI. So my slides today are going to look at the recognition and registration processes in order to register and practice in Ireland. For everyone who doesn't know, the NMBI are the statutory independent regulator for nurses and midwives. We have a legal function to protect the public and protect the professions of nursing and midwifery. And from my point of view, we do that through our recognition and qualification processes and the maintenance of the register. I'll give you some oversight of how many nurses and midwives we have practicing. If we go on to the next slide there, Conor. So we take a snapshot on the 1st of June every year, and we publish that in our stated register. So as of 1 June last year, we had 92,300 nurses and midwives on our register. 86,000 to 87,000 were practicing, and 80,000 were patient-facing in their roles. That shows a sustained increase on the next slide, about 3 or 4% in each of these areas over years. So the overall workforce of nursing and midwifery is growing pretty considerably over the past few years, and it continues to grow. The number of applications we're receiving in Ireland is pretty high. If we go on to the next one, we can see on average we get about between 6,000 and 7,000 applications per year from outside the EU who want to come to Ireland to practice as a nurse or midwife. We very much are quite competitive against most of our other neighbours and other similar countries in comparison to the size of the country we have, reflecting the number of applications we get of people who want to come here. The majority of our applicants will come from outside the EU, so the Irish undergrad numbers are increasing by about a few hundred places every year, and is slowly matching the number of overseas applicants coming in. The number of EU applicants is more or less stable, but the number of people coming from outside the EU, which includes GB, is sustained and continues to increase, which is good. For people who don't know, we have a lot of divisions of registrations and we have a lot of divisions that we have to manage. So we have primary divisions of registration, which is general, midwifery, children, psychiatric, and intellectual disability. These are all completed at the undergraduate level. And then once you have one of the primary divisions, you can then apply for a post-primary divisions, which are regulated titles. And this can be different in different countries as what is regulated and what is a registered title in different areas and different jurisdictions. So to be a nurse prescriber here, it is a registered division, which means we have minimal thresholds that has to be achieved, a very defined course that has to be undertaken. And similarly for an advanced practitioner, either advanced nurse or midwife practitioner, it's a very clear standards requirement in order to gain registration to practice as an AMP here. So it is very different to other countries, but it is very well regulated and very highly regulated here. So my job in the registration department, we look after different pathways and different processes. So the majority of our work is in the recognition of qualifications for people who want to come and have qualification recognized by the NMBI, that it meets the NMBI standards, and therefore they can move on to registration. The second part of the process is that registration function. So there's different things we need to check that you can actually go on the register. So you have a qualification and you can get on the register. We do additional qualifications, as I said. So if there's other qualifications that need to be added onto your registration or your license to practice, my department looks after that. And at all times, any decision I make or is made by my team can be appealed. So we have an appeals function that's a separate committee of the board. It's independent of us that will look and listen to any appeals if you feel our decision wasn't correct. So how do you get to be what is the process for recognition? So we really focus on where you got your qualification from. Not really where you're from or where your passport is, it's where the jurisdiction that you got your qualification from. And that's how we determine is it a G1, G2 or G3. So a G1 qualification is an EU exact qualification. It demonstrates equivalence with the EU directive or the NMBI standards requirements. It's a very short process. So it means you got your qualification either in Ireland, and the NMBI will have pre-approved that program. So we know exactly what the program will deliver. It meets our standards requirements, and therefore when it comes to registration, that qualification is already recognised and you can move on to register fairly quickly. Similarly, across the rest of the EU, we will get confirmation from the EU Home Authority of the standard of their qualification, that it has been recognised by the Home Authority, that it meets the EU directive, and therefore you can move on to register, and they're very straightforward. The second category is that you've got an EU acquired qualification. So you may have got a non-EU qualification, but you've met other standards and other requirements set out within directive. And it's usually in terms of employment for a longer time in an EU country at the right level. And we will get that confirmation from the member state competent authority. That comes directly to us, and then we can assess it and check and make sure it's okay, and we can add you to register. The third category, and that's the most common category, as I showed you earlier on, is for non-EU qualifications, and that's outside the EU, including England, Scotland, Wales. So these are categories where we will need the details of your qualification and your transcript. If you qualified in the UK pre-2021, the NMBI has made a decision to keep granting you the EU rights under G1 or G2, depending when you qualified. But if you qualified, or you qualified, even if you started a course, if you qualified post-2021, it's a non-EU qualification and you need to go through the non-EU process. So that means we need to understand what your course entails. That means we need to understand what your transcript was, the duration, the placements, and all of those details to try and figure out, to assess it against our standards. And then the last part, we will also look for additional qualifications that may come through. So we need all your documents, yeah. So I'm going to go through the non-EU qualification process for a recognition of your qualification. This is a very simplified diagram of what we look for, but it kind of breaks out the steps that your qualification will go through in order to be recognized. So the first step is the administrative assessment. So this is where we look to complete your application and see is it complete at the point of submission. We do document checks, we do veracity checks, we do fraud checks, we will do verification on your identification. There's a number of databases that we'll access to make sure there's nothing outstanding on your name or your license from a different area. But we'll also check, have you given us the details that we will need in order to move your application on? This can often be the point when it can cause a bit of frustration and there can be a lot of back and forth. And I would very strongly advise you read what we look for before you submit, because once you submit, you go into a queue. If there is stuff missing, we'll write you, tell you what's missing, but you go to the bottom of the queue again and we take the next application off. And therefore it can add a lot of time into the process if you don't make a complete submission at the front door. So the more information you give us at the front door, the more information you provide at the point of submission, if it's all correctly certified and documented well, it means we can do this in usually 1 or 2 steps and move through. But this can be an area that kind of goes around in circles quite a lot for a very high level of incomplete applications coming through. Once we're happy that all the documents you've given us are verified, all documents are true and authentic, and we've sufficient information there within what you've given us in terms of your transcripts, your curriculum, your syllabus, we will then move it on to one of my education assessors. So I have a team of education assessors who are highly skilled nurse midwives who will then look at the education you've received and they'll line it up against the NMBI standards. And it sounds quite straightforward, but it's very much a calculation in terms of the duration. So not only how long the course was, but how long the course was actually delivered over, the modules in ECTS, the hours of the course. We look at the content in terms of curriculum hours or clinical hours versus theory hours. Again, measuring against the NMBI standards. We will also look at the content of the program, the modules that were delivered, were key nursing and midwifery functions delivered within that content, what definitions of utility were in terms of what was delivered throughout the whole course. And we'll look at your specialist placement as well. Particularly if you're looking for a general registration, you have to have that general capacity and competency across a lot of different areas. So the NMBI standard requirements, they're on the website in terms of what we are looking for. Both in terms of duration, we have to go to 4,600 hours. That's 2,300 hours theory, 2,300 hours clinical, and the specialist placements we will look for across a variety of different areas. They will do an assessment of your qualification. They may come back looking for more information at this point. We may also go back to your university or your college looking for clarification of the content, and maybe clarification of the credit systems that's used. How many credits is an hour? We often have to go back and clarify what that is, but we try to make a determination pretty quickly of what it is. The assessors can then make 1 of 3 recommendations to me when they've completed their assessment of your qualification. So the first is that we will recognise the qualification, and that means your qualification demonstrates complete equivalence with the NMBI standards. And equivalence is binary; it's either equivalent or it's not. So that means your qualification has 4,600 hours, equivalent level of core content of theory and clinical understanding, and the clinical placements have all been completed directly the same as if you had done the qualification within Ireland. That doesn't happen too often. And since the UK divergence, that is a reducing list of HEIs across the UK that maintain that level of recognition. The second option they would give me is that we refuse to recognise a qualification, that the course is just far too short. Either there's core area is missing, it's too short in duration, the placements are completely unevidenced, or we don't get the evidence required from the transcripts to demonstrate for us to measure up against. So if we can't get details of placements, if we can't get details of hours, if we can't get your curriculum or your transcript, we've nothing to measure against, and we can't recognise that qualification anymore, and we'll refuse it. That does unfortunately happen, and we try to minimise it, and we will go through fairly extraordinary lengths to engage with the HEI and with yourself and with the NMC. But at some stage we have to make a call, and we haven't got evidence there of qualification, we will refuse it. The third option is a compensation measure required. So it means the qualification is good. It just means it's not directly equivalent with the NMBI standards, and there may be gaps in either placements or clinical hours or theory hours, but we have met key thresholds across all different areas. It's a good qualification, but to demonstrate that level of equivalence, you have to go and do a compensation measure. Last year, 60% of applicants from England, Scotland, and Wales had to do a compensation measure. So far this year, it's only about 50%, but that may change depending on the next cohort that comes out in a few weeks. So we will write to you saying you need to do a compensation measure or that your qualification is recognised. If it's a compensation measure is required, that's up to you to go off and adjust the compensation measure. There's different options depending what division you're looking to get registered in. If it's a general nurse, you can do either a period of adaptation in one of 62 sites across the country, or you have the option to do the aptitude test in the RCSI. So it depends where you want to work. If there's a preference of your organisation you want to work in, if they have a preference for a compensation measure, or how quickly you want to get registered. The RCSI runs tests kind of every 2 weeks. Adaptation is run at the schedule of the site you want to work in. So I would very much encourage you to look and ask your site if you're looking for an employer, if they got a compensation measure preference, and if it is adaptation, when's their next adaptation program running, so you can build that into your timeline to take up work. Once you've done your compensation measure, then you can go back to us to get registration. So you now have a qualification that's been recognised. You've addressed the compensation measure. You come back to us to get registered. We will then, depending on the time frame, ask for an updated certificate of good standing if you've practiced in the UK previously. If you qualified in the UK, you won't need to give us an English language test, and then you can move on to register pretty quickly after that. We'll go on to the next one there, Connor. So some very quick do's and don'ts before you start the process. There's a guidance document up online, there's FAQs up online. Please take the time to go through them and make sure you have all the documents ready to go before you start the process. It can be very frustrating for you if we keep going back looking for documents, but we can't progress an application that is incomplete. We can't progress an application if we don't have all the information available, and we will have to keep going forward and back. So take the time in advance to make sure you have everything you need, and make sure it is certified if it needs to be certified and ready to go before it gets uploaded to us. Please do check in advance if your qualification meets the NMBI standard requirements. Maybe, as I said, there's a growing number of applicants coming from GB who will have to do a compensation measure, and it can be a very unfortunate surprise to get. If you have a job lined up and then you've told you have to go off and do either an adaptation or aptitude test, it's something you need to kind of prepare yourself for. You can measure your qualification against the NMBI standard requirements and just check if it's not perfectly equivalent. It may default into requiring a compensation measure. Just plan it in advance to make sure there's no surprises. Please don't submit an incomplete application. It's just going to annoy you. It's just going to waste more time. It's going to extend the process to get through. Please don't, if there's specific answers, we need specific information going back. Generic and generalized information for gaps in practice are really not very helpful. Please, if you have worked since you qualified, tell us. We don't know why, but some people leave it out, and it just, again, delays the process. We will also look at any post-qualification experience you have and see would that address a gap in your qualification, and that may not, and therefore you may not even be required to do a compensation measure, and maybe I'd skip that and get recognition. So if you have worked, please tell us that you've worked, tell us where you've worked, and give us the details of it so we can consider it as well. And don't presume we understand your experience or qualification. We will look for more detail, but we're doing it for the right reasons. We want to try and see how far we can get your qualification to the point of being recognised. And that's really why we ask lots of questions. So please take your time, complete an application once, do it properly, and we will turn it around as quickly as we can. But if it's incomplete, it will inevitably have delays. And do have a look and see if you think you might need a compensation measure and build that into your plan to come back to Ireland. It's not a nice surprise to get later in the process. We will need certified copies. Again, this is just an example of what a certified copy is. It means that you've taken your passport to an approved authority, and the list of what we accept is on our website. You have to show them your passport, show them the photocopy of your passport, and get them to stamp the photocopy to say they've seen the original, they've stamped it, and they've seen the photocopy, and they are one and the same. They can't stamp the back of it. They can't stamp the side of it. They have to stamp on the front of it so they can say that the photocopy is a photocopy of the passport and it's you in the passport. That's our very highest level of assurance that you are the person who's applying for registration with us. So please, again, that is an often it's a common source of incompletion of people who send us a picture of passport. We've had lots of people send us selfies, which are brilliant, but they're not very helpful. A certified copy is that you've gone to an approved authority with your passport and your face and the photocopy, and they're saying the photocopy is of the passport, and that's what they're stamping to say that it's a certified true copy of the original, and they're signing it. If that's what we get, we will accept that straight through. If it's not, we will reject it, and you'll have to go off and get it sorted again, and that will take time and energy. So again, please take time to do this all before you apply to us. It will make your process much more straightforward and much simpler. they're the appropriate authorities that we let go through. So solicitors, lawyers, notary public, peace commissioner, justice of the peace, commissioner for oaths, and in the UK we'll accept post office staff as well. So again, you must take the photocopy and your passport to one of these authorities, get them to sign it and stamp it that it's a certified copy original, and then we can take it. Yeah, sorry, I'm really hammering that home with a point. Don't sign the back of it, don't sign a separate page and stamp it, don't sign the second page and staple to it. Don't sign, say they have to say it's a certified copy. They don't. We've had examples where you sign and say it's a certified copy, and they've signed. They're saying that you've signed it. They need to say that they've seen it as a certified copy of the original, and they sign it. So again, it's these kind of technicalities that can trip a lot of people up, but there's a logic behind it. There's a very good rationale, and that's why we kind of have to enforce it to make sure it is good. That's a link to our website. If you have more questions, as I said, we have an FAQ, we have a guidance document, we have a checklist there. The standard requirements are up online if you want to compare your qualification and preempt if you need a compensation measure. And if you think about any other questions, you can come back to us on that. I think next slide has our contact details as well.
For us, so we're the HSE. Who exactly are we? The HSE, it's one of the most progressive employers in the country, where our teams are nurtured and supported to be the best that they can be. We are the largest employer in the Republic of Ireland with we've over 167,000 employees working, and the way that's divided is into what's called 6 health regions. So they were recently incorporated in the Republic of Ireland, and it essentially localizes the care into 6 health regions in the form of integrated care. There's a lot more information about that available if you want that on the HSE page as well. So our workforce then, how typically does it work with such a large number of people? How do we organise our staff? And this is done through our staff categories. So it is done through our nursing and midwifery, health and social care professionals, patient and client care, medical and dental, management and administrative, and our general support staff. Again, we've over, I think, 54,000 nursing staff within the HSE. And a point to note at this stage is our starting salary for our staff nurse or staff midwife is 37,788. All our salaries are available online, and they're on our HSE page, and you can simply Google HSE salary scales and it will show you any profession, any career that you'd be interested in. It's a good point at this stage to note. You could probably map out, if you're going down the clinical nurse management route or especially into a speciality as well, you can see what the level of pay is at that stage. So it's a good indication of, I suppose, your future as you're conducting the research into it. So the benefits of working with the HSE then is similar to the survey that you've done. We've done this for the last couple of years that we've been running the webinars, and a lot of the main theme that comes up with is the vast majority of people that work-life balance brings, the most meaning and purpose into a job. And with this as well, with a focus on that, we have, a lot of healthy workplace initiatives as well. We've flexible working, we've generous annual leave, and we've employee assistance programs as well. With career development and stability, and we do that through our permanent contracts, our learning and development opportunities. We have an e-learning portal as well called HSE Land, as well as our career pathways. So we have a lot on the Career Hub, which Niamh will allude to as well in terms of career pathways, and I'll leave that for her to discuss. In terms of financial and other benefits, we have competitive salaries. As I said, they're available online for you to view. We have the pension as well, a pensionable job, and as well the cycle to work scheme is included. So in terms of careers then, where do I find a HSE job? How do you go about looking or sourcing a HSE job? So the first port of call for you should be to visit the hse.ie/jobs page. What that does is it'll give you an indication of jobs that are current and that are live today. You simply visit that page, you search the staff category nursing and midwifery. You can put keywords into it if you're looking for a specific role, and then you just search. That will give you a list of jobs that are currently available, and you can review the jobs then. Once you click on the link, you're met with a page that will have 3 documents with it. So it has a job specification, which will outline your duties of the role, the people that you'll be working with, your responsibilities, and various things about that exact role. As well with that, there'll be an application form, and then there'll be additional campaign information also. So it's always worth reviewing them documents and having a good read of them before you apply for the job. Once you decide this is the job you want to apply for, you simply complete the application form and you submit it before the closing date. A point to note when you're interested in a job for the HSE and you find you're filling out your application, on the job specification and on the advertisement, there will be a closing date. The closing date is extremely important because once that job closes, the job, won't be available after that point. Many HSE jobs are available for a 2 week period and then they're gone. Others can go on for longer and we can have rolling campaigns, but it's always good to have a look at that job advertisement just to ensure that you don't miss the closing date. For the purposes of this as well, the hse.ie jobs page will only show you what's live there today and what is current, but it's not going to give you any indication or any reminders of what is upcoming. And for that reason, one of the elements, one of the reasons why the platform, the HSE Career Hub, was created was to give out weekly tailored job alerts. Niamh will be going through it as well, but it's a good thing to actually register with the Career Hub. You can register your interest as a staff for staff nurse jobs or for staff midwife jobs in any particular location in Ireland. And then when that job is available, we will send you a notification with the link for the job so you can review. It's a very handy sort of thing to be a part of because as life happens and exams and everything, it's not always possible to check every day these websites. So what that will give you will be just a reminder that this job is live and without you actually actively looking for it. So it's a good one to note. The recruitment journey then with the HSE looks like this. So we have our step one, which is your job search, which I've just discussed. So you search for your HSE jobs, you can register with the HSE Career Hub, you find the job that you want to work for, that you want to apply for, and you fill out your application form. Again, and similar to what was discussed with the NMBI, like you have to put down all the relevant information on that document. You don't just assume that people will understand that you've done X, Y, and Z. The information has to be labelled there for the recruitment team to review it. At the stage the campaign closes, the recruitment team will take all the applications received and they'll run it through the eligibility process. So for the likes of staff nurse and staff midwife, they will look at the eligibility criteria, which there's eligibility criteria for every single job that is advertised. But it looks for specific things like, are you registered with the NMBI or are you eligible to be registered with the NMBI? So they'll look through that in your application and they'll make a decision on your application at that point, and then they will decide to move you on to interview. And at that point you will receive an email stating that you've been called for interview. It'll give you the time, the date, the people on the board, and it'll give you information about the actual interview as well. So competency-based interviews, it'll give you areas that you can do some study and investigation on before you actually interview. At that point on, the successful people at the interview will move on to a panel, and they will be put on a panel in order of merit for how well they've scored an interview. And at that point, job offers will be issued out. And again, if a person is offered the job and they accept it, they move on to the clearance and contracting stage as well. So the likes of Garda vetting and reference checks or everything like that will be done at that point. As well as, further just investigating your NMBI registration also. So for the HSE Career Hub, I will pass on just to my colleague Niamh here to discuss.
Great, thank you, Connor. So as Connor has spoke about the HSE Career Hub platform, so this is it here, as you can see. At the top there, you can see a number of tabs. So I'll just kind of briefly explain what's included within those. So the who we are is about the HSE. Within the recruitment section, then you'll find a link to current vacancies, information on the recruitment journey, and there is also 3 training modules to assist you with the stages of the recruitment process, which Connor spoke about there. They cover areas such as applying and interviewing for a job in the HSE. Then next section, then the careers section, there are career pathways, which we'll have a look at in a few minutes. There's links to previous webinars, and this webinar will be recorded and it'll be hosted on there as well for you to watch back. And there's also an events calendar where you can meet with ourselves, the talent attraction and engagement team, at events within Ireland. There's a tab there for the health regions, and there's also information about service spotlights. So within this section then it highlights some of the amazing work our colleagues do across the organisation. So you can have a look at some of those. And then finally, as Conor spoke about, registering on the HC Career Hub. So you fill in your email address, you'll be picking the category nursing and midwifery, and then you can pick your preference of job that you would like to apply for in the areas midwifery, intellectual disability, mental health. So there's lots of different areas. You can pick whichever ones that your preference, and then you can choose the counties that you would like the jobs in, or you can keep it the option to all so that you can have more options available to you, and you won't miss out on any jobs that become available. So we'll have a look at one of our pathways, and you can find these under the careers section, as I had mentioned there, under the nursing and midwifery category. So we'll just wait for that. So under careers, under career pathways, within the nursing and midwifery category. This will bring you to the nursing and midwifery page, where you can see general information about this area. And so your role within the HSE, career progression, it gives you information on development, further training and development, and also the staff benefits and testimonials. So we're just going to go into the general nursing one, just to give you an example of the information that it provides. So within this section then, it gives you a brief overview of our general nursing within the HSE. Entry routes there are linked, they're the Irish entry routes into the profession. It gives you information about your role within the HSE, and you'll see there that once qualified, you must register with NMBI. It gives you information about your role within the HSE. You'll see there's a lot of career progression opportunities, from clinical roles such as clinical nurse specialists to management roles, educational roles, research and development. And within the HSE, there's lots of developmental supports available through the Nursing and Midwifery Planning Development Unit. So Anne might speak further on that in a few minutes. Sorry, back to the learning and development. There's the HSE land portal, and finally the staff benefits. Conor had mentioned about the pay scales. The pay scales are linked within there as well, and you can see the increments for each point of the scale. And we will have some testimonials coming in this section shortly as well. That's perfect, Conor. So the HSE do offer a relocation package for candidates coming from the UK. You'll see here the amounts that are offered. So the package provides support towards accommodation costs up to 3 months, up to the value of €3,910, flight allowance up to €250, and also within this package, initial costs such as registration fees and aptitude test are also included. It is important to note that you must have accepted a permanent or temporary post for 2 years to avail of the international recruitment package, and you must apply in writing to the recruitment office that you are going through, that you're dealing with for the post that you have accepted. All claims then will be supported by receipts and stuff like that. So, and they must be submitted within 4 months of your start date. So that's a really good support that's available if you do accept a job within the HSE as well. And finally, I just want to highlight there's a video that is included on the Who We Are section of the HSE Career Hub. This is a really great video. It'll give you good insight into working within the HSE, so I definitely recommend to check that out. And I will pass you on to Anne, who will give you some information about the ONMSD.
Thanks, Niamh. Much appreciated, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks, Conor, and that way sort of thing. So we are the Office of Nursing Midwifery Services Directorate within, obviously, the HSE. And in regards to, so in that way, from point of view, so we work with our colleagues in Relocation, Ray and Caroline and Magella, in regards to the NMBI. Also, we work with our colleagues in the Department of Health, Rachel and the team there, and in that way, and then obviously our colleagues in education in regards to the universities and the HEIs, and obviously 15 of them. And in that way, we've sort of like multiple streams of sort of nursing initiatives in that way that we engage with and work collaboratively, and that's sort of thing. So our role and function within, next slide, Conor, there, if that's okay. Thank you so much. So in that way, we strategically lead and support the workforce, the nursing and midwifery workforce, to develop safe, high-quality, patient-centred care to meet and transform the agenda required under the actual sort of policy of Sláinte Care to improve healthcare in Ireland. And really, we work very closely with our Director of Nursing colleagues and nursing and midwifery colleagues in regards to looking at creating capacity and capability within the nursing and midwifery workforce. And that way, our vision is to sort of achieve excellence in nursing and midwifery care, and that way we lead and enable nursing and midwifery professions and that sort of thing. And our values include care, compassion, commitment, trust, and learning from the point of view. So in that way, we have a corporate office, and in that way, which is led by our esteemed colleague, Dr. Geraldine Shaw, in regards to that, and she works quite closely with the senior management team, senior leadership team within the HSE and that sort of thing, and obviously to ensure that we're all sort of like strategically aligned and obviously working to the same agenda, and obviously then from the point of view of having a sort of a shared mission, vision and values in that regard. So there are 8 nursing midwifery planning and development units within the Republic of Ireland, and that way, and they have various different locations such as Sligo, Leitrim, Donegal, obviously the West Midwest, Limerick, Galway, Mayo, and in that way. And then our colleagues in Kerry, Cork, Waterford, the Midlands, obviously, and Kilkenny, and then Dublin North and RD. So in that way, we're all strategically placed, and we engage actively with our stakeholders in that regard, which include directors of nursing and practice development coordinators. In conjunction with that, then we have specifically centres for nursing and midwifery education that are strategically based also, and they look to obviously link in with services in regards to, and obviously look at service need and provision and what's required. And we basically commission programs that are required from a service perspective and enable and support our clinical colleagues in that regard. Also as well, then we have national leads for older persons, midwifery, public health, mental health, intellectual disability, children's, nurse midwifery, medical product prescribing and radiological referrals and immunisation, and obviously look to meet with all the sort of demands that come from the clinical requirements and support our clinical colleagues in regards to the evolving workforce and demand from an actual clinical perspective. And also then we have a National Clinical Leadership Centre, which is led by our colleague Marie Kilduff. And obviously we include leadership programmes and mentorship programmes for sort of our young staff nurses, and obviously then colleagues working as clinical nurse manager and as assistant director of nursing level as well from the point of view. So, and that way that just gives us a broad range, so we're good in reach to all of our sort of nursing and midwifery stakeholders in that regard. So the supports that we include in regards to yourselves or our colleagues for nursing and midwifery. So obviously we support obviously advanced nurse practitioners and obviously building the capability and workforce for there, and also then our clinical nurse specialists, and that builds on all the capabilities of all the specialities that were referenced earlier in relation to general nurse and mental health, intellectual disabilities, midwifery, older persons, obviously public health, and all the various different disciplines in that regard. Obviously we support professional development in regards to nurses and midwives. We look at education and continuous professional development, so supporting individuals who want to do postgraduate programs, masters by research, and all the educational requirements there, and we've good in-reach with our HEIs. We look at role development in regards to the evolving nature of work from nursing and midwifery and the evolving clinical components or the clinical demands in that regard. We look at service improvement and innovation, and in regards to if there's anything from an actual sort of proof of concept and workforce planning in that regard. And then we obviously work with evidence-based practice. Obviously digital is a space we're evolving and moving into, and obviously got prioritization in that regard and how we can actually progress and support colleagues in that. Professional development planning is a key role as well in regards to obviously everybody doing their PDP and obviously identifying their own requirements and what plans they have, be it from a short, medium to long-term perspective. We work with safe staffing and obviously the cohorts there with our colleagues in the Department of Health, and then obviously from a quality assurance mechanism, and that way ensuring that we obviously have mechanisms of ensuring that and means of how we actually measure that. So so for the point you, so that's just giving you a brief overview of what we actually do. Just to say, our website then as well is in the Office of Nursing Midwifery Services Directorate, and that'll be available also as well.
Register on the HSE Career Hub today on careerhub.hse.ie and take the first step towards a rewarding career in health and social care in Ireland.